former Prince Andrew. We have some newspaper headlines here that we've been going through all day. Of course, he's splattering the front pages. We have the Daily Mail, the crown in crisis, downfall. They say the former Prince Andrew looking haggard, shamed, and haunted. This is just one of many around the world today that are picking up this massive story that came as a huge shock, obviously, to the royal family and to everyone else. There was a large media presence here yesterday, all through today. Slowly, journalists are packing up their belongings and heading out for this monumental story that has just come as a massive surprise. We kind of knew something was going to happen after the U.S. released those documents, but we didn't know it was going to happen quite like this. What was interesting is the former Prince Andrew was arrested. He was not, invited down to the police station to ask for more questions. If you pan on over here to Buckingham Palace, you can see crowds and tourists coming to take a look, but it was so much busier today, probably the busiest I have actually ever seen it at Buckingham Palace, when it was the changing of the guard. So I think all of this royal fuss right now has definitely drawn out the crowd right now. But what we know so far, the Thames Valley Police, they haven't released any new details, but detectives have been coming and going all day at the former prince's former residence, the Royal Lodge in Windsor. It's owned by the Crown, but it's where Andrew lived for many, many years before being forced out and stripped of his royal titles last year. Now, of course, if you guys have any questions throughout any of this, feel free to message in and we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. But the sun, as you can see, setting slightly with those clouds coming by. But the latest we know is he recently moved from that Royal Lodge in Windsor last year to Sandringham Estate. And that is exactly where he was arrested yesterday morning around 8 a.m. We heard there were several unmarked cars and plainclothes officers who came in and arrested him. We haven't heard too much from his brother, of course, King Charles III. He's not in at the moment. Fun fact, you can tell if the king is inside of Buckingham Palace depending on the flag that is shown right above the building there. But we haven't heard too much. He did release a statement, though, the king, after all of this about his brother. He said that the law must take its course, and then King Charles quickly carrying on with his public-facing duties, attending an event for London Fashion Week actually yesterday, and Queen Camilla, she was at Westminster for an orchestra. Legal experts, though, they're saying that legal proceedings, they could take months or even years. As I said, they're still over at the Windsor estate searching through anything, basically material in government archives, government records. He was trade envoy for 10 years, started 25 years ago. So there's definitely going to be a lot of things to comb through. The former prince, he was held for roughly 11 hours yesterday on suspicion of misconduct in public office, but released for further investigation, meaning he is essentially right now free to go wherever he wants. No sightings of him so far, though, today. The arrest, of course, comes after police were looking into claims that while serving as UK trade envoy, Andrew shared confidential government documents with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. So definitely a lot to go through. What's also interesting about kind of the timing of all of this is yesterday marked the former prince's 66th birthday. Definitely not a present he was expecting to have. And definitely a lot more information is going to be coming out over the next several days. Again, he was held in police custody for about 11 hours and then released. A lot of legal experts say, he's going to be treated like anybody else would in this situation. He'd be sat in a holding cell, likely questioned. He was released last night. Of course, we have those photos marking the front pages of most of the newspapers here today. He was trying to avoid cameras, but, he got caught out, obviously, trying to lean way back in his chair as he drove out of the Aylsham police station. But right now, again, he's free to go where he wants. We don't know that he's taken his passport away from him. He didn't, call out on bail or anything. So right now is just kind of the holding pattern that we're in. And that's kind of why you can kind of see some of the journalists packing up for the day and moving on, because it could take months until we hear the next steps from all of this. But we haven't seen the former Prince Andrew at all today. We know that he was driven back last night, back to Sandringham Estate, so we shall wait and see what happens from there. But let's, at the moment, we'll see if we have any questions coming in. We have a few questions coming in. People say, why was he released so fast if they're still investigating? Now, the law here in the UK is that people, once they're arrested, can be held for 12 to 24 hours. It was quick, if you think about it, 11 hours. Still want to be sat in a cell for 11 hours, but it was on the shorter side. 11 hours, and basically you either get charged or released pending further investigation, and that is what has happened in this case. The next question we have is, what are police looking to find by searching his former home? Well, we had a quote from one of those legal experts who basically said, you know, this has to do with his time as a trade envoy. And he says he was a trade envoy for 10 years, started 25-ish years ago, this expert thinks. And he says, quote, there's plenty of material in government archives, in government records, perhaps in palace records, that they will want to look through before they can decide whether they have enough evidence. Also, what they're going to be going through is, you know, basically anything and everything. They're going to be looking through photos, they're going to be looking through electronics if they have that, computers, laptops, if there's phones left there. He did live there for many years, but again, he did move on to the Sandringham estate. That estate had a huge flurry of police activity yesterday, but last night the Thames Valley Police said they had finished their search there and they were moving on to this other location. At the moment, we'll see if any other locations pop up. There was a rumor, you know, maybe it could happen to Buckingham Palace. The king obviously would be up for full, you know, support of this investigation, which he has said many times. We have another question. We have, what are locals saying about his arrest? Do people in the UK like him? I think he has definitely become the disgraced prince. That's kind of the vibe we are getting from people here on the ground. A lot of shock as well. We had many people who were here visiting yesterday and even today who hadn't even heard of this news yet and thought it was just so surprising that it happened in this manner. This all of a sudden, you know, we go from nothing to an arrest and he's in custody in a police cell. It all happened very quickly, and is also the first time a senior royal has been arrested in nearly 400 years. I believe the last one, we had it earlier, was 16 something, and it was King Charles I who was arrested over treason, and he was sentenced to death in that. But we haven't had anything since. We've had a couple run-ins with police. We had Princess Anne in 2019, I believe. She had to pay a fine, £500, I believe, for her dog bit two young children, but never arrested, just fined. And then you also have Prince Philip, who had a run-in with police. Nothing really happened. That just police warned him that he should wear a seatbelt while driving. But that's pretty much it that we have. You also have other things. You got Prince Harry. He's been in the UK recently for his court case against the Daily Mail and just, you know, things that they have said about him. So definitely a lot going on for the royals right now. But the king is kind of maintaining this presence of, you know, we got to keep calm and carry on. And I think that was shown yesterday that he released his statement, then he went to a London Fashion Week event. But we got another question. We have any of the members of the royal family made any statements? We did hear from the king yesterday. I will read a little bit of it. He basically said, we haven't heard from anyone else. Basically, he released this statement, and we haven't heard, obviously, from Harry. We haven't heard from we haven't heard from the Princess Royal. We have heard a little bit from Prince William and Catherine. They basically just reiterated that they support the king's statement. The king's statement, which I can pull up here in a moment. But essentially what the king's statement said is that, you know, he supports the legal process and the authorities, and they must do a thorough investigation. He did say, quote, the law must take its course. He didn't say anything other really than that. And then he was spotted yesterday, as well as Queen Camilla. Reporters threw questions at him, but he did not respond. They both just waved and carried on. We have another question here. We also, I was going off of that, we haven't heard anything from his former wife, Fergie, or their two daughters. Obviously, royal experts have said this is an embarrassing moment for them, for the family, but doesn't directly involve them, and they can move on with their charities and trusts that they have. Let's see. We have, have we learned details about what the alleged misconduct in office that they're investigating was? Well, we do know that the Thames Valley Police Department, they were investigating some reports that he was passing along sensitive trade information, sensitive government documents to Jeffrey Epstein at the time. So that's kind of what they're looking into. That's basically all we have when Andrew was trade envoy. They have been very, very tight-lipped other than that. What's next? Again, legal experts think this could take months, it could take maybe weeks, or it could take years. Only time will really tell from now. But thank you guys for all of your questions, and keep them coming. But for now, you can tune in to Fox News. We will be on in about 30 minutes. We'll talk to you then.